A strike delivered from a distance of barely 1 inch hurled a grown man several yards backward. The year is 1964, the Long Beach International Karate Championships. The air inside the hall is thick, heavy with the stinging scent of polished wood floors, the dusty aroma of old mats, and the humid weight of thousands of people sweating in anticipation. In this cavernous, windowless space, powerful spotlights cut through the darkness, crystallizing millions of dust motes suspended in the air. These tiny specks, floating in slow motion as if defying gravity within the crushing silence of the moment, form an invisible halo around the young man on stage. Bruce Lee stands there with the stillness of a statue, arms hanging loosely by his sides. But beneath that calm, a massive roar is building, rising like the crushing pressure in the deepest trenches of the ocean. The silence is so dense that even the sound of the ocean outside crashes against these thick walls and bounces back, unable to break in. Under the glare of the lights, Bruce feels a single drop of sweat tracing a warm, tingling path down his temple. His mind is honed with the deadly, calm attention of a tiger waiting for its prey. He hears the pressure of the blood rushing through his veins like war drums, and as he slowly exhales that heavy, dusty air, he listens to the subtle tension shifting in his ribcage. The skeptical whispers and doubtful glares of the crowd echo off the cold concrete walls, reaching his ears. To them, he is just a fast kid or a show-off. But there's one thing this crowd doesn't know. In this moment, Bruce is about to bend the laws of physics. This undefinable power rising within him comes not from his muscles, but from the very center of his existence. Why was he here? What was he trying to prove? As these questions hang in the corner of his mind, he focuses solely on that millimetric point where his knuckles touch the rough fabric of the man's jacket. In that instant, the rest of the world begins to blur. The spotlights, the thousands of people, and that stinging smell all fade away. All that remains is that tiny gap and the volcanic energy ready to erupt inside it. Bruce Lee is about to transform from a fighter into a conductor, a lightning rod channeling universal energy from the earth to his fingertips. The thousands surrounding him expect a grand spectacle, a winding up of the arm, shouts, or complex choreography. But Bruce has wrapped himself in the silence of a mountain. The stillness of the moment is so fragile that it is impossible to distinguish the ticking of the clock from the beating of his own pulse. When his knuckles lightly press against the opponent's chest, it feels as if all the physical laws of the universe have gathered at that tiny point of contact. The storm inside him has settled, replaced by an icy clarity. While everyone waits curiously to see what he will do, he isn't trying to break the target outside, but the internal barriers blocking the flow of energy inside. This silence is pregnant with history's greatest biomechanical and philosophical lesson. So, how would Bruce generate this impossible power without any distance? Power is not just a contraction of muscles. For Bruce Lee in that moment, it is the entire body playing a single note like a flawless orchestra. His knuckles are fixed on that millimetric point touching his opponent's jacket, but the real movement has already begun in unseen depths. Bruce feels as if he is gripping the mat beneath his toes with claws. Energy begins to climb from the soles of his feet, like magma drawn from the depths of the earth. His calf muscles tense with a vibration, his knees bend slightly, and his hips lock like the handle of a whip, primed for a sudden rotation. Everything happens in microseconds, at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Physical mechanics are only the visible face of the work. Immediately after, a much heavier burden kicks in, the massive responsibility of mental focus. Thousands of pairs of eyes at Long Beach are fixed on him like lasers. The silence of the hall is actually the suppressed sound of thousands of whispers saying, "You can't." 1 inch of distance. No room to accelerate. No space to wind up for power. His mind could whisper, "This is impossible." It could say, "This defies Newton's laws." But in that moment, Bruce deletes the word impossible from his mind. If you doubt, your muscles tense. If your muscles tense, energy cannot flow. He imagines his body as a fire hose, and the energy as the pressurized water rushing through it. If the hose kinks, the water stops. So he relaxes. He relaxes completely, lethally. The tempo now shifts to a harsher, sharper, breathless rhythm. The mind does not stop. Energy rises. From the feet to the hips. From hips to spine. Spine to shoulder. And finally, that explosive lock in the shoulder. Bruce doesn't look at the target. He looks through the target, at the wall behind it. Because the place he wants to hit is not the surface, but far beyond it. And right then, the preparation reaches its peak. Bruce Lee feels in every cell that true power is not in hitting, but in transferring. His arm is not a weapon, it is merely a barrel. The gunpowder is his entire body. The audience sees only a standing man, but inside, a nuclear reaction has begun. Bruce is ready to transfer his 145-pound body weight into a single point, into those tiny knuckles, in less than 1,000th of a second. But could this moment of absolute focus truly defeat the laws of physics? How would Bruce Lee carry this mental and physical unification into that final moment of impact? How can a person strike without distance? As this question stretches Bruce's entire being like a taut bow, under those Long Beach spotlights, on the edge of the impossible, a silent scream rises from a man. The suffocating, dusty noise of the hall suddenly settles in Bruce's mind. Time slows down like a silk thread drifting through an hourglass, and everything locks onto a single point, a drop of water in a small porcelain bowl sitting on the sidelines. In that moment, he imagines a bead of sweat glistening under the stage lights. The moment the drop surrenders to gravity and hits the ground, it scatters without resistance, without entering any conflict. Bruce realizes once again in the deep silence of that moment that the unshakable power he has sought all his life lies not in the hardness of a rock, but in the fluidity of water. Water takes the shape of the container it enters, but when faced with a dam, it crashes through it. Because water has no hesitation, no doubt. When the raging storm in his mind gives way to the clarity of a vast, calm ocean, the stinging smell of dust in the room seems replaced by the electric scent of the air before a storm. As Bruce waits with his fist resting on his opponent's chest, he is no longer just a human body. He is transformed into formless, limitless energy, just like the water he imagined. To tense up, to try to hit, are actually shackles that imprison power, whereas one must not hit, but release energy. The heat generated by the stage spotlights no longer burns his skin. Instead, it ignites the gunpowder ready to explode inside him. In that millimetric space where his knuckles touch the opponent's cloth jacket, Bruce no longer sees a distance of 1 inch. There's only an unstoppable river waiting to flow. His mind has stopped fighting his body and has begun to dance in perfect harmony with the flow of chi. He is less of a fighter and more of a physicist preparing to bend the universe's most fundamental law of action and reaction. Steel can be bent, hardness can be broken, but pure energy can never be stopped. In the middle of that dusty stage at Long Beach, in front of thousands of skeptical eyes, Bruce Lee whispered the greatest secret of his life. I am not the target. He is not the target. There is no target. There is only the flow. He ended that relentless war of preparation inside him with the formless wisdom of water. He had found the answer. True power was an intention filled with emotional content, flowing unhesitatingly to the target. But how would he turn this deep, abstract philosophy into devastation in that millimetric gap made of flesh and bone, in a moment as short as 1,000th of a second? In that instant, all the rusty gears of time locked together, and the crushing silence in the massive hall gave way in Bruce Lee's mind to a magnificent clarity, a blinding light. This was not just a punch, but a moment where spirit commanded matter. Bruce no longer saw an obstacle within that narrow 1-inch gap. It had become a clear channel through which the accumulated energy of the entire universe flowed. In that second, Bruce Lee ceased to be a fighter hitting the man in front of him. He was now a flawless conductor, transferring the power he drew from the earth into his opponent. When his fist moved, a motion too fast for the eye to track, The dust motes suspended in the air were scattered in all directions, as if caught in a hurricane caused by the sudden airflow. The stinging, dusty smell of the room was replaced in a split second by the ionized, electric air that follows a lightning strike. As Bruce's knuckles grazed the jacket, a dull, explosive sound echoed through the hall, the sound of bone, muscle, and fabric colliding. His opponent, severing all ties with gravity, was launched backward, feet lifting off the ground as if hit by an invisible car, flying several yards away. As the gasps of the astonished audience dispersed like a hum off the cold walls, Bruce simply stood his ground, hands still in the air, listening to the silence of the massive power that had just flowed through his body. Now, I want to ask you directly. Imagine, don't you have those narrow, 1-inch barriers in your own life that seem impossible to overcome? Most people believe they need to wind up, run, and struggle immensely to create a big impact. But Bruce Lee whispers this to us. The greatest power is hidden in the narrowest spaces, right at that point where absolute focus begins. Will you scatter your energy against the 1-inch obstacles in your life? Or will you focus your entire being like a laser on that single point and turn the impossible into reality? Look again, and more closely, at this black and white photo on your screen. The unshakable stance in this image is the purest representation of the mental clarity and formlessness Lee achieved on that dusty stage in 1964. He is frozen in this frame not just as a fighter, but as proof of mind over matter. But this demonstration at Long Beach was only the beginning of the legend. This incredible display of power would not be enough to instantly open all the doors before him. The world was impatient to test him, but no one yet knew of the final philosophical surprise Bruce Lee had prepared for the world.